Good morning. How's that mic working today? Is the mic working? Hello. Okay. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of the Desert. My name is Mel Wilkinson. I'm pleased to be your worship associate on this beautiful Sunday morning. It's not blowing wind, so that's a good thing. We are happy you are here with us today, whether you are here in the sanctuary or watching online at home. If you would please take a moment and silence your cell phones and all things that ring, like mine did a few weeks ago. We acknowledge that we gather on the ancestral and unceded territories of the Agua Caliente Band of the Cahuilla people, who have stewarded this land through many lifetimes prior to our arrival. We strongly commit to growing in our understanding and relationship with this land, our dependence on it, and with the people who inhabited it before our arrival. As we work with all of this, we strive to nurture each other, to honor the inherent worth and dignity of every person in this congregation. And what that means to all of you is that all of you are welcome, and we are very glad you are here with us today. If your race, your culture, your religion, your financial well-being, your size, your gender, or sexual orientation is different than, everybody else's, then you're not alone. We celebrate the diversity you bring, and we look forward to sharing life stories with you. What matters now is that you are here now. So come and learn and grow with us as we commit together to embrace the rich and beautiful diversity of the world. I invite all of you to help us build a community centered in justice, in compassion, and particularly today, let's focus our energies toward love. All right, welcome to our little church here. Please join us for coffee after our service. Reverend Ian will ring the Tibetan bowl, and Malcolm Swan will play our music for centering today.
Good morning and welcome. I have the honor and joy and delight of serving this congregation as its minister. My name is Ian Riddell. Welcome to all of you here and online. I open our service this day with the words of my colleague, the Reverend Erica Hewitt. Welcome to this morning. Welcome to this day. Welcome to this opportunity to be together in community, which is a time of joy, comfort, and sometimes challenges. This Unitarian Universalist congregation is a place where we come to learn more about being human. We're not here because we figured out life's questions or because we think we've got it right. We come here to learn more about being in relationship together, how to listen, how to forgive, how to be vulnerable, and how to create trust and compassion in one another. Let us move into our worship today, willing to be authentic, to be real with one another, honest with ourselves, and open to connection in all of its forms. Let us worship together today. And friends, we're going to begin our worship, as we always do, by singing together. I invite you to rise in body or in spirit as we sing, "Come, Come, Whoever You Are." We'll sing it through twice all together, and then I'm going to break you into parts. I think we can do 4 parts today, so let's see how we do. So, here we go. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshipper, lover of leaving. Ours is no caravan of despair. Come yet again, come again, come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshipper, lover of leaving. Ours is no caravan of despair. Come yet again, come. We'll start over here. Come, whoever you are. Come, whoever you are. Come, whoever you are. Come yet again, come.
As we light the chalice this morning, please follow along with the words. May love be the spirit of this church. May the quest for truth be its sacrament, and service be its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, and to help one another in fellowship. This is our aspiration. And this morning I've asked Sandy Sladen to light the biopot candles and follow along. We light these candles in solidarity with Black, Indigenous, and other people of color as we journey together towards spiritual wholeness. May we, as a beloved community, work to dismantle racism and all forms of oppression. May we will prevail. Thanks, Sandy. My life of learning. While I was in school, I was always amazed by the people who seemed to love to be there. Loved being in class, just all around happy to be in school. I was not one of those people. The only time my light shined was when art or ceramics or learning some esoteric, obsolete bit of knowledge that would never come around as long as you lived, until I discovered Jeopardy. Don't get me wrong, I've been reading since I was about 3. I was reading my parents' murder novels when I was 10, and then I delved into World War II, and in my teens, I not only watched every war movie I could devour, I read voraciously about the war. It fascinated me. So many novels are woven in webs of truth. And when you read the same occurrences from different authors, you begin to piece together what happened. I know a lot about the history of the Navy before I ever went in the Navy. I knew about the Battle of the USS Midway, Battle of Guadalcanal, and about how we were bombed into oblivion in Pearl Harbor with such accuracy and audaciousness. Then I got stationed at Pearl Harbor. My mother gave me the novel Hawaii by James Michener for Christmas. I knew a lot about the history of Hawaii before I ever touched foot on the islands. We then fast forward many, many years, and Jane and I undertook the study of widening the circle. With 4 other friends, we learned many things during that discussion group, not all of them pretty. We learned about redlining and things like Juneteenth and Oklahoma City's Black Financial District being burned down for no other reason than they were Black. Many were killed during that time. I was going to say there that many had died, but that isn't true. They were murdered. Many of the things we learned in that class, then the class we took on Waking Up White, where we learned how our basic biases lead to our thinking and how to think a little bit differently. We took another class with Reverend Ian delving deeper, which talked to us about the theology and ministry and worship of the UU tradition. If you haven't taken something like that, I suggest you do. It helped me a lot in my background of what the UU ministry is. There's a lot of history instructors on the internet today. They talk about a lot of history. I watch almost all of them. I'm hooked. They talk about how the past interweaves with now. And it has so much to do with racism and hatred it can bring about, and to tell the truth, acted out by people who don't know their history, or have taught an incorrect history, or have a habit of watching Fox News for extended periods. This wasn't meant to be a diatribe about history, or how badly we know it. This is intended to be an encouragement toward lifelong learning. I'm proud of myself for knowing the difference between authoritarianism and a strong leader. Without education and reading, I shudder to think about what I could have been today. I am proud of my friends who march and protest and rail against the establishment. I remember in the 60s when they were marching to signify dislike of yet another war, when the signs read, "Government sucks," and "Don't trust the government." Does that sound familiar? That was when Johnson and Nixon were presidents, and yet here we are, in yet another stupid war. Another war without a good ending. How do I know this? Because I read my history. We, as good UUs, read more than any other group of people I know. We are educated and know morals and ethics. Keep it up. Know your history. Education is a spiritual practice. I suppose it has been similar to my spiritual journey in that sometimes I had a rougher time than others, just like my recent learnings. Sometimes what I learned hasn't been pleasant, but some of it isn't easy. But all of it opened my eyes and my heart. Thank you.
Thank you, Mel. Thank you. Now is the time in our service where we take a moment to hear some beautiful music. Let it soothe our hearts and our souls while our hands are reaching for our wallets and our purses. I'm not making anything pretty about it today. We're taking an offering for the support of this beloved community, this place that offers us room to grow, room to learn, challenges, and hopes and possibilities. So please, if you will give as generously as I know you'll always do, we will take an offering to support the work of this beloved congregation. This is what has been shared with us out loud today. But I know you, and I know me, and I know us, and I know there is much on our hearts. There is much to celebrate. There is much to fear. And so, without words today, we pause. We pause in quiet and reflection. And we pause to rest in the love of this community, rest in its possibility and its hope, rest in our commitment to each other and to the work of justice and love in the world. We will pause and rest for a moment of quiet, and then I will begin to sing. I invite you to join me in singing as you feel comfortable, or just allow the voices of your neighbors to wash through your heart. When we have finished singing, we will pause again for more quiet together. We rest in the quiet of this place and in the love of each other's company. Friends, will you join your beautiful voices together as we sing Spirit of Life, Fuente de Amor? Spirit of life, come to me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea. Move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me. Fuente de amor, ven hacia mí y al corazón cántale tu compasión. Sopla al volar, sube en la mar, hasta moldear la justicia de la vida. Arráyame, libérame, fuente de amor, ven a mí, ven a mí. Thank you. You know, sometimes we preachers are called to preach big things, to be angry, to be prophetic, to be bold, to be loud. And sometimes there are those moments, those weeks, those days where we're called to a quieter place. Today, I think, is one of those days. I think that I have shared before with you that I am the human in our household who walks the dogs in the morning most days. We have several paths that we take around our neighborhood, but we are often to be found in Wolfson Park on Frank Sinatra at the base of Duval. If you don't know, it's a lovely little park right on the Arroyo there, and there's a button you can push, and you can actually hear Frank Sinatra's voice telling you about Rancho Mirage for some reason. There is lots of grass. The dogs don't care about that. There is lots of grass, and there are lots of interesting plants to sniff, and I don't have to worry about keeping the dogs off other people's precious property. The dogs love it. There are some other regulars that they do love to sniff at, but mostly we stick to ourselves. But there is one of the things that draws me there are the rose bushes. A couple of dozen rose bushes, in fact, surrounding the fountain and the paths leading to and away from it, and one little cluster of bushes closer to the arroyo. These rose bushes blooming, it seems, year-round. Almost all of them are white or pink, except for, strangely, miraculously, one lone yellow rose bush. That's my favorite. Now, I'm not an expert on the cultivation or care of roses, not much of a gardener at all, but I've always loved roses. Along with the lilac tree in the backyard of my childhood home, the roses my mother tended outside the kitchen window shaped the way my childhood was colored and the way it smelled. So I've always been fascinated by roses, but lately I've become more interested in learning more about them, where they come from, how they are grown, the place they have in our human societies. You've heard me quote Rebecca Solnit's essays a lot over the last years. I am grateful for her thoughtful and grounded perspective on our world and the day-to-day news, and her wonderful way of writing. And so when I found out that she'd written a different kind of book called Orwell's Roses, I grabbed it, or I grabbed the audiobook anyway, and I listened to it on my recent trip to Arizona and Nevada. Solnit centers her writing on the fact that George Orwell, the author George Orwell, author of 1984 and Animal Farm and many other anti-fascist and fascinating works of history, in his diary he noted that he'd planted some rose bushes outside the country cottage that he lived in for a long time. And Solnit went to see if she could find those roses and visit them a few years ago. And she used this trip as an invitation to reflect on the life and the work of George Orwell, on the growing fascism he spent his writing life combating, on the realities of colonialism and of the Spanish Civil War, on the working conditions in Northern England in the first half of the 20th century, on the rise and fall of Joseph Stalin, and on roses, their cultivation, their history, and the current reality of the farming and origins of the roses that we all buy at the florist or the Trader Joe's. It's my favorite kind of book, rambling, thoughtful, full of the joy of finding connections and going down obscure alleys. It inspired me to spend some more time with George Orwell's essays, to ponder the ways in which our current political environment parallels what was going on in Russia and Spain and Germany and Italy of the last century, and to buy a couple of books about roses that I'm taking with me on my next vacation. Now, some of this learning that I've been inspired to has a purpose, fodder for sermon reflections and understanding our situation more clearly so I can talk and think about it in more intentional way. But also, I just like knowing stuff. Just for the sake of curiosity, maybe jeopardy too, but the sake of curiosity and the joy of seeing how everything in our world is connected and interwoven, I like to learn things. It really helps when doing crosswords and other word puzzles, of course, but in many ways, it has also become a spiritual practice for me for its own sake. Being curious, diving down rabbit holes, finding out new things about the world around us. I've been very open this year that I've been preaching once a month, focusing on the roles in social change that Deepa Iyer laid out in her book, Social Change Now. But I don't think I've been as vocal about the fact that I've also been focusing one service a month on spiritual practices that we can continue to nurture and develop in the face of the mess of the world in our lives, practices that help deepen our resilience and our understanding. The practice of silence. Ignatius of Loyola's daily examen. The practice of gratitude, of chanting, of making with our hands, of movement. Practice of crafting relationships. These have all been focuses at one time or another this year, and next month we're going to look at kindness as a spiritual practice. Today I want to ponder a little bit about learning as a spiritual practice. A reminder about what I think spiritual practices are. We build, and I've said these exact words to you before, actually about 4 years ago, so I am recycling a little bit. We build spiritual practices of repeated ritual, meditation, chanting, prayer, the practice of returning each week to our collective liturgy and worship or our small group ministries, the attention we pay regularly to the yarn or pens or carving tools we use to craft new things, the exertion and work and knowledge of our physical selves when we swim or hike or run or guide ourselves through the forms of our martial arts. Each of these practices brings the pieces of our experiences, our emotions, and our anxieties to a focused place where we can be with them in a new way, hold them differently, hold ourselves differently, and gain perspective and grounding and the ability to respond to the world intentionally. And it takes intent, and sometimes the reflection that these practices bring to us is challenging to us, sometimes a little painful. And it takes intent and will to return to a practice that can expose ourselves to that clearer vision and understanding of who we are and what our actions are creating in our lives and in our world. And as we return again and again and again to our rituals, if we do it with commitment and honesty, we're faced more and more with deeper truths about ourselves and the possibility of being transformed by these understandings and experiences. And so learning can be a spiritual practice. And we learn things in many, many ways. We learn, some of us anyway, joyfully in classrooms, as Mel mentioned, lectures, exercises, conversations, memorizing, drill, manipulating toys and tools and objects. We learn by working with teachers inside or outside the classroom, knitting lesson, driver's ed, trade apprenticeships. The music Malcolm is playing for us today by Chopin and Bach and Liszt was created and collected by these composers who were also master teachers, created to help their students learn the skills and intentions necessary to become competent and inspiring performers. We learn by intentionally observing, how is this rose different than it was yesterday? Where is the moon going to rise from tonight? How many cars usually get through the turning light on that corner in one light? Where are people lining up for tickets? How does the person sitting next to me work the slot machines? How does the person sitting next to me hold their yarn while they are crocheting? What happens when suddenly someone stops suddenly at the base of an escalator? And we learn, of course, as we use love, by reading. Books about roses and George Orwell, books about history and botany, politics, ethics, war, peace, drawing skills, cooking, the story of the development of jazz, and the plays of Shakespeare or Lorraine Hansberry, theories about worship, the impact of colonialism on indigenous people. We learn from reading. And we learn about other humans' lives from our books, too. Novels and biographies give us understanding of how the human brain and heart work by opening a window into the lives of people we will never meet. We learn by experimentation and experience when not to touch the burner on the stove, how long it will take us to cross that road, what the right amount of vanilla is good in cookies, more. And garlic and anything else, but anyway. How to get the basketball through the hoop. What happens when I play these three notes together on the piano? How much water does this plant need? We have been learning our whole lives. And these days there are more tools than ever. I started to learn knitting by taking lessons from a friend and then by reading patterns and books about knitting and just trying stuff. But I also took advantage of the growing number of knitting blogs and YouTube videos to expand my skills and learn how to do specific things. Over the last decade, the availability of online learning material has exploded. Video tutorials about knitting and making sourdough, fixing your car, reading Emily Dickinson, which museums to see in Pittsburgh or Paris, how to bullet journal, how to manage your ADHD, how to exercise, how to write a novel, what books to read. It's all there, and so much more. Now, there have always been people we call autodidacts, people who have developed their own plans and learned about all parts of life on their own outside of school or formal education by reading, observing experts, trial and error, and now YouTube videos and podcasts, people who taught themselves because they didn't have access to other forms of education or because they were told by their society or their families that they didn't deserve to learn. There are content providers online who have created whole university-level curricula you can follow if you want to read what English majors at Harvard read or what history majors at Oxford read. I listened to a podcast a few years ago where a scholar of Baroque literature read his way page by page through Paradise Lost and then engaged in analysis and conversation with the online community he was building. There is a lot. And there's a lot of good stuff, and there's a lot of slop, and a lot of propaganda. And discerning what is good and worthwhile to use in learning about the world is as challenging as discerning what news we're getting how the news we're getting is reliable. And that's a topic for another day. Suffice it to say that while doing your own research, it is really important to remember that there are experts in the world and that listening to them, even when they disagree with your preconceived notions, especially when they disagree with your preconceived notions, may be very crucial in developing your own understanding. And how do we decide what to learn about? Perhaps there is a need in our lives. We want to cook at home more. We're short on cash, so we need to cut our children's hair at home. We're going on a journey and need to know about where we're going. Or sometimes we bump into things in our lives like rose bushes that make us wonder and invite us into being curious. Sometimes a friend will send us an online video or a fellow congregant or suggest a TV show, or most delightfully, I think, for many of us, hand us a book and say, "You have to read this." When I was an undergraduate studying music in Toronto, I lived in a small dormitory on campus called the Center for Christian Studies. Most of the residents were in graduate programs focused on religion or social work. Some were actually in seminary. I was still convinced I was going to be a music teacher, so I was studying music. And there were several students from the Faculty of Music over the years that had found a home there, as I did. My next-door neighbor, Tony, was studying for a master's in religion and politics, and he knew I was studying to become a teacher, music teacher. And so one day, after a long conversation about the state of education, he handed me a book and said, "I think you'll appreciate it." It was called To Know as We Are Known and was written by Quaker writer and philosopher Parker Palmer. Along with his other work, some of which I think many of you have read, Palmer was an educator and had written a few books like this one about education and teaching and learning. In To Know as We Are Known, Palmer set out thinking about the spirituality of education. He believed that teaching should be the work of creating a space in which obedience to truth is practiced. Now, he didn't really mean factual truth in this case, but deeper truths about the world and ourselves, and to create learning environments that embrace the whole of our being, not just our rational selves or our physical selves, but our spirits. In his words, our souls. He begins the book by writing about what our sources of knowledge were and where our desire for learning comes from. And he started by identifying two areas that he thought had become central to the ways that our culture here understands and practices learning. He shared that curiosity was one of them, and the quest for control was another of the two groundings of our culture's assumptions about learning. Now, much has changed since 1982 when he wrote the book, but it's still interesting to me. Curiosity, he felt, was mostly about the desire to know hidden secrets, to be in the know. And he asserts that the quest for control meant that learning was about exercising control over our environment, ourselves, and each other, gaining power. That we learned for curiosity and gaining power. And he derided both of these sources as suspect and generating a knowledge that carries us away from an engaged and grounded life. There was another way for Palmer. He wrote that the reason we should ground our quest for learning in was a knowledge that originates not in curiosity or control, but in compassion or love. A source celebrated not in our intellectual tradition, but in our spiritual heritage. He continues, the goal of knowledge rising from love is the reunification and reconstruction of broken selves and worlds. The love of which spiritual tradition speaks is tough love, the connective tissue of reality, and we flee from it because we fear its claims on our lives, acknowledge that lives spring from love. A knowledge, he says, that springs from love will implicate us in the web of life. For Palmer, we should practice learning and seek knowledge in love because it grounded our spirits and led us back to community and connection. I'll come back to that in a moment, but I want to go back to curiosity and control for just a bit and share with you that I bristle a little bit when he said curiosity is a bad reason for learning. I think curiosity is a fascinating reason for learning. I just want to say that out loud. Knowing more about the world is enjoyable for some of us. And there. But I want to look at control a little bit as well. He talks about our learning as being building systems of control so that the hierarchies of the world remain in place. We learn how to fit in to the hierarchies of the world. We learn how the world is controlled. But I want to decenter that for a little minute and take a look and realize that gaining control over our lives and our environments is crucial for those of us whose lives are marginal or oppressed or diminished by people in power. I think of enslaved peoples who took the deadly risk of learning how to read when it had been forbidden to them. They learned to read, and new possibilities, taught each other to read, and new possibilities of communication and understanding were open to them. They gained some control over parts of their lives and power to make change. And think of many, many other instances where someone chose to learn something so they had more control over their life so that they could be in charge of their own existence and their own life. And so control is not necessarily a bad thing. Just want to argue with, excuse me, Palmer a little bit there. So learning and spiritual practice. Our spiritual practices are central because they offer us rest in the storm, because they poke us to reframe our understandings, because they help us see ourselves and the world around us more clearly and more honestly, because they remind us that we are not alone and that what we do with our hands and our actions come from our deepest convictions. Because when the going gets tough, our practices and disciplines help us see why we are doing what we are doing and both see our power and acknowledge our humility. They can become part of our daily lives, always with us when we need them, there to return to again and again to the core of our connection with the wider universe and the deeper love that flows in and through us. This is why I think intentionally learning more about our world and our neighbors and ourselves, why learning can be such a powerful practice. It helps us see ourselves more clearly. It can invite us into confrontation with those things about ourselves which we have ignored or misunderstood and find new ways to be in that knowledge. It can help us see what we may be missing, about the lives and needs of our neighbors. And it grounds us more deeply in understanding that we are less susceptible to demagogues and propaganda. And it brings us deeper into knowing how richly and inextricably all of life is woven together. It helps us see how roses are connected to resisting fascism and global trade and the writing of essays and the politics of nations, and how our hearts are bound together in the practice of love. May we, in the days to come and the months to come, open our minds and our hearts to the wonder of this messy, joyous, challenging, holy cosmos. And may we always respond with curiosity, hope, and love. May it be so. Friends, will you rise in body or in spirit as we sing together, "For All That Is Our Life"? For all that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise. For all life is a gift, which we are called to use to build the common good and make our own days glad. For needs which others serve, for services we give, for work and its rewards, for hours of rest and love, we come with praise and thanks for all that is our life. For sorrow we must bear, for failures, pain, and loss, for each new thing we learn, for fearful hours that pass, we come with praise and thanks for all that is our life. For all that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise. For all life is a gift, which we are called to use to build the common good and make our own days glad.
As we begin our congregational news, I'd like to give thanks for a couple of our friends. Barb Gate is home and well, and so is Dean Bramlett. They were both released from the hospital this week and are home and doing better. Our President, Rod Belchey, asks that you stay for the congregational meeting that will commence at promptly 11:30 this morning, right after the coffee break. We invite you all to join us on Zoom. However, Zoom is undergoing its own upgrades and will be available in 40-minute increments. Just redial the same Zoom information, rejoin the meeting, or easier than that, just stay here for the meeting. The facility chair, me, would like to remind you that only water is allowed in the sanctuary during the meeting. Wait. Aha. I love computers. Rob Doors informs us that the computer cupboards are undergoing a cleaning process beginning next week. This will reduce the volume of service pieces that have accumulated over the years and are largely unused. Please contact Rob Doors to make arrangements for picking up or saving any personal items, like lost water bottles. Leslie G. would like to remind us that the Crafting Day emphasis is on celebration, community, and connection, because the intellectual part of our working human system resonates well when we use our hands and eyes in creation, experimenting, coloring, stitching, laughing with others, no matter what else is going on out there. You are invited for the joy and vibrancy of creative expression offers, and we meet the first Wednesday of each month, which is next Wednesday, May 6th, from 11 to 1. Bring your own project, your beverage and snack, and join us in the community room. New or old timers are always welcome. Denise Jansenegger is not here this morning, but I have word from her. She says that your votes have been tallied for the Share the Plate, and be sure to join today's meeting. As soon as it's over, the 2026 and 2027 slate will be revealed. Have you heard of the IC4IJ? It stands for Inland Coalition for Immigrant Justice. For the past several months, a group here at UUCOD has been working with them in multiple ways, and we would now like to invite you to do one small thing. This is a red card. See red? It is used by immigrants in the U.S. to silently exercise their rights during an encounter with immigrant agents like ICE or Customs Border Protection. It carries legal text explaining that the holder is invoking their right to remain silent, refusing a search, and demanding a warrant. Would you please pick up a couple of the red cards in the lobby on the table to the left of the office or the welcome table, and them out to anyone who you think might be arrested by ICE or CBP. It could be your neighbor, your pool person, your house cleaner, your gardener, all the people you already know who may be arrested by immigration agents because they look different from you or me. Denise thanks you. Allow me to thank the army of people who take the time to begin and end our service weekly. The hospitality crew, the welcoming crew, the greeters and ushers. We give thanks to the AV crew, also to the crew that are dedicated to cleaning the unmentionable places in the building, and to Reverend Ian W. Riddell for leading this congregation into the work that brings us together and forms bonds, and so many other things. And of course, I would like to thank Malcolm Swan for always being here. That's okay. So thank you for making this magical moment happen. All the committees that meet, the people that come and play games, to do art and many other things, and of course the building itself that requires maintenance and do our wonderful sacred grounds. It takes a village, doesn't it? It takes us all. Thank you so very much. Now we'd like to extinguish the chalice. Reverend Ian, as you'll read along with me. We extinguish this chalice, but not the light of truth, or the commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
And of course, thank you to Mel and all of our wonderful worship associates. Thank you, Mel. I want to close today's service with 3 passages, one from a novel and 2 from poems. You know I'm a little bit of a magpie, and so I bring these learnings to you. The first is from part of T.H. White's The Once and Future King, and Merlin is talking to young Arthur when he's sad. "The best thing for being sad," replied Merlin, beginning to puff and blow, "is to learn something. That's the only thing that never fails. You may grow old and trembling in your anatomies. You may lie awake at night listening to the disorder of your veins. You may miss your only love. You may see the world about you devastated by evil lunatics, or know your honor trampled in the sewers of baser minds. There is only one thing for it, then, to learn. Learn why the world wags and what wags it. That is the only thing which the mind can never exhaust, never alienate, never be tortured by, never fear or distrust, and never, never dream of regretting. Learning is the only thing for you. Look what a lot of things there are to learn." The second is part of a poem by Alfred Noyes, which has been used as lyrics and for a hymn in one of our hymn books. "Knowledge, they say, drives wonder from the world. They say it still, though all the dust's ablaze with marvels at their feet, while Newton's laws foretell the knowledge one day shall be song. We seem like children wandering by the shore, gathering pebbles colored by the wave, while the great sea of truth from sky to sky stretches before us, boundless, unexplored." And finally, inevitably, wonderfully, Mary Oliver. Instructions for living a life. Pay attention. Be astonished. Tell about it. Go in peace, dear friends, to love and learn and serve this world.